الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So tonight inshallah ta'ala we'll be continuing discussing the book Al-Mulaqis al-Fiqh by Shaykh Salih Al-Fawzan Hafidullah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And in the last lesson we had completed bab of the Ahkam al-Janaiz, discussing concerning Ahkam al-Janaiz. So we have completed regarding that particular discussion, and with that we had ended concerning Kitab al-Salah. So all those matters that pertain to Salat, that they have been covered based upon what have been mentioned in this particular book. And we started the introduction regarding matters regarding the next chapter, which is Kitab al-Zakat. So matters that relate to Zakat, that we started that discussion. And the Shaykh Hafidullah, that he mentioned certain general matters regarding as-Salah, regarding Zakat, regarding concerning that Zakat being one of the arkan of Islam, and also one of the mabani al-Islam, one of the important pillars of Islam, and also regarding the general and regarding concerning that certain general ahkam that relates to az-zakat. So inshallah ta'ala tonight we'll continue regarding from where we had stopped, which is zakat fi shar, regarding the author rahimahu hafidullah explaining as to what is zakat and discussing other matters that pertains to zakat. Aywa.
Bismillah والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. قال المؤلف رحمه الله حفظه الله: Az-Zakat, according to the Sharia, Islamic law, is a rightful obligation on a special property or a particular group of people to be paid at a particular time.
Aywa. So the author Hafidullah, he first mentioned regarding of those points regarding explaining what is az-zakat. So defining what is zakat according to the Shar. So according to what he has defined here in a very simplified way, haqqun wajib, that it is a haqq, a right that is wajib, fi mal khas, in a specific type of wealth, litaifatin makhsusa, upon to be given to a specific group of people, fi waqtin makhsus, in a to be fulfilled within a specific time period. So that he kind of somewhat summarize the definition of as to what is zakat. So when he mentioned regarding haqqun wajib, that is concerned that it is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made compulsory upon to be offered. And he mentioned fimal makhsus, from those people who are said to be wealthy, and also on specific wealth to be mentioned, also specific wealth to be mentioned, لطائفة مخصوصة, and this to be paid to a specific group of people. So to be paid and distributed to a specific group of people during a specific time range, within a specific time range. So all those inshallah ta'ala that will be discussed in further detail, but that is just to explain what is said to be az-zakat. Aywa.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillahi. Qala ma'alif hafidahullah. Chapter 1, Zakat, Legality and Virtue, page number 321. Allah has called Zakat by that name as this word in the Arabic, meaning purifying the soul and the money. It is not a fine or a tax that reduces the property and harms its owner. Contrarily, it makes the property grow more. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The wealth does not decrease out of giving in charity." Zakah, according to the Sharia Islamic law, is a rightful obligation on a special property of a particular group of people to be paid at a particular time. The time when Zakat is to be paid is when a complete year passes with regard to cattle, money and trading commodities, when grain become hard and the signs indicate ripeness, ripeness appear with regard to fruits. With regard to honey, zakat is to be paid when it reaches the amount liable for zakat. The mining of minerals upon which zakat is to be paid with regard to the minerals. Concerning zakat al-fitr, break fasting zakat, it is to be paid after the sun sets of the vigil of the breaking fast feast, Eid al-Fitr.
So the author, rahimahullah, he discussed concerning as for zakat, that of the ahkam that relate to zak, of those wealth that zakat is to be paid upon. So of those wealth where zakat is taken from, that he mentioned in general concerning that, of those they mentioned concerning asnaf, al-amwal. So this type of different type of wealth, where if the person possesses these wealth, and also there are certain other things that are in place, then zakat is to be taken. So he mentioned in brief regarding, as the ulama rahimahullah, that they mentioned regarding of those things that of those who have categorized those type of wealth into 5 categories. So they mentioned regarding of those concerning ba'imatul an'am, which are concerning cattles, and those cattles they mean concerning that it includes al-ibl, which is camel, bakar, cows, and also ghanam, sheep and goats. So those are the type of cattle that zakat will be taken from those, and also certain will adds to be discussed further. The second, athman. So those things that are said to be things that are of value, and those things that are said to be of things of value concerning naqdan, which is al-dhahab wal-fidda. So those things of athman are things of certain values, and what is intended by this is matter relating to al-dhahab wal-fidda, which is gold and silver, what was then the common type of item that was used regarding trade and commerce. Then I mentioned regarding of those matters, they mentioned urud al-tijara. So you find concerning of those matters is regarding urud al-tijara, meaning concerning those things that are put for sale and for purchase, those things that are done for commercial reasons regarding buy and selling. Those are of those matters. And inshallah ta'ala, to be discussed further, then the fourth of those things is kharij min al-ard, those things that comes forth from the earth. And that would include concerning certain type of crops, and also things of items that are found within the earth. Then he mentioned the fifth, which is al-asl, which is also of those things that he mentioned, that is mentioned regarding the fifth, regarding things relating to al-honey. So those are the things to be discussed in more details. Each will be discussed individually regarding the rules of zakat that applies to them. Aywa.
A Muslim must give zakat if he or she meets 5 conditions. Number 1, being a free person. Zakat is not imposed on a slave because he possesses no property, and what is in his hand belongs to his master. Therefore, his master is the one who must pay his zakat.
So that's the first of those matters regarding who are those individuals who is compulsory upon them to pay zakat. So of those things are, so what are the conditions regarding those people whom is upon them to pay zakat that he mentioned first, or those concerning those conditions concerning tajib zakat, of those who are the condition, if they're in place, then one has to pay zakat, which are 5 conditions he mentioned. 1, tajib zakat ala muslim. So of those things that a person must be, as mentioned regarding the Muslim, that one Muslim, that he should be hur, a person who's a free individual, as he mentioned. As for the person who's said to be a slave, an unfree person, then there's no zakat to be paid or taken from his wealth. Then a second.
So the second one, being a Muslim. The second condition is that the owner of the property must be a Muslim, as zakat is not imposed on a disbeliever. A disbelieving person is not asked to pay it because it is an act of approaching Allah as well as an act of showing obedience, and the disbeliever is not amongst those people close and obedient to Allah. It also needs intention, which is impossible to arise from a disbeliever.
So the second of those conditions regarding, if these conditions are placed, then zakat becomes wajib of those things that they mentioned. The second, the person, أن يكون صاحب المال مسلما. And so the person who possesses this wealth, that also he has to be a person who's a Muslim. So as for the kafir, فلا. So as for the non-Muslim, then فلا يجب على الكافر. It is not compulsory to take zakat from a non-Muslim. And it's because they mentioned that of the condition regarding acts of ibadat, that a condition that relates to acts of ibadat, then of the criteria regarding Islam. So for concerning Sihhat al-Ibadat, that the criteria is that a person carrying out this act of ibadah, he must be a Muslim. As for non-Muslim, then no. That's the second condition. Aywa.
Whether it is to be imposed on a disbeliever or not, and whether he is to be punished, particularly in the hereafter, for not paying it or not, it is still a controversial issue amongst scholars. Therefore, in the hadith narrated by Mu'ad radiallahu anhu, in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, invite the people to testify that there is no deity but Allah, and I am the messenger of Allah. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam added after he had mentioned performing prayer, if they obey you to do so, then tell them that Allah has made it obligatory for them to pay zakah from their property, and it is to be taken from the wealthy among them and given to the poor. Thus, the Prophet ﷺ made the conversion to Islam a prerequisite for the obligation of zakah.
So the author, rahimahullah, in also kind of explaining further regarding this matter, regarding upon whom zakat is compulsory, that he mentioned concerning wajib ala Muslim. As for the kafir, the non-Muslim, then he mentioned la yajib, it is not compulsory upon them to pay zakat. Then he kind of somewhat try to give a brief insight as to the reason behind this khilaf. So the reason why the ulama, they have a disagreement regarding concerning Muslim and non-Muslim regarding being accepted. That is an issue that is discussed with the ulama of usul al-fiqh, where they mention concerning hal kafir mukhatib bi furu' al-sharia. So meaning concern that are the disbelievers, are they also expected, are also they are addressed in fulfilling, carrying out acts of Islam, acts that are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made compulsory upon them. So are concerned that salat compulsory upon them or not? Is paying zakat compulsory upon them? Is abstaining from zina compulsory? So these things that are, are these acts that are upon the Muslim and expected from the Muslim by way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is also the same applicable upon the kuffar. They mention yes, that they are mukhatib bifru' al-sharia, that they are also of those people who are included in complying with the sharia. So the kuffar, that they are also expected to comply with the sharia, but because of their kufr, what they do will not be accepted. So what they do will not be accepted because of the shurut of acceptance of an act of ibadah, is that the person has to have an intention, and the person has to be a Muslim. So that's concerning. That's concerning of the and so that also extend to the next dimension. Biha ya'a, are they also biha wa ya'aqib alayha fil akhirah? Is the kuffar would be also punished for not doing of these things? So if we say that they are expected, that they are also of those people that they are expected to comply with the Sharia. So if not, then also they'll be punished for not doing so. And the reason so, it is not accepted because of kufr. It's not accepted because of kufr, but they are still expected to comply. Clear? So that inshallah ta'ala, that's concerning. Then he mentioned the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ regarding concerning that stipulate that the Muslim is expected to pay as zakat, as the hadith in the Bukhari and Muslim of the hadith of Mu'ad ibn Jabal Rata'ana when he was sent to Yemen. Aywa.
The third condition is having the nisab. The third condition is the possession of the nisab. Thus, no zakah is due upon what is less than the nisab. It does not make any difference whether the possessor of the nisab is old or young, sane or insane, as the legal proofs pertaining to this are general. There is no specification mentioned in this regard.
So the third of the condition that he mentioned, that is mentioned regarding of those that is expected to pay zakat, that he mentioned that of those conditions, فَلَا تَجِبْ فِي مَا دُونَ nisab, that also of those things that there's a certain limits regarding if a person was to have wealth that it exceed a certain amount, then the person is liable to pay zakat. So there's a certain, so as we'll discuss, that for each of those items, regarding those items that zakat is to be taken from, there's a certain, there's a minimum that if the person was to have below this, then there's no zakat. And there's a certain amount. If he possesses this amount or above this, then he's liable to pay zakat. So anything below this amount, there's no zakat. And so that's concerning that particular matter. So the zakat is not per se looks at the individual, whether the person is an adult or a child, male or female, as a Muslim, or the person is considered to be sane or insane. The fact that the person has wealth, then that's the thing that is looked into, that the person possesses a certain wealth of a certain amount. Then zakat is to be paid if it is above that amount. Aywa. So as mentioned concerning al-majnoon, is not per se him, but what he possesses, even though it is being looked after and being managed by others. So that's concerning, or even the child. A child may be wealthy of what he may inherit from his parents or from his family. He's said to have wealth, but he's a child. But he may not be the one to manage that wealth. There's others, but zakat is still paid upon that wealth, without per se taking consideration whether the person is a child or not. Aywa.
The fourth condition, being an established owner of the property. The fourth condition is that the ownership of the property must be settled, so that none lays claim to it. Thereupon, no zakat is due upon a property whose ownership is not established, such as the debt of a muqatab, since the muqatab still has the right not to fulfill the agreement.
So they mentioned regarding concerning that istiqra, milkiyah. So after those things they mentioned also concerning al-milk al-tam, that a person he has complete, he has full possession of that wealth. The person has full possession of that wealth. So it's also of those things that is looked into regarding of the criteria. The person has full possession of that wealth. Aywa. I will discuss that answer. So as the person that wealth, a person might have wealth. For example, you have wealth, as we discuss soon. But for example, a part of that wealth that a person possesses, that you have lent others some of your wealth. You have X amount, you have 10,000, but you have lent out 9,000. But in really, your value is 10,000. But how much you actually owe and possess at this moment is 1,000. And the other 9 is elsewhere. So you have a discussion to be discussed. Does the person that 9,000, do you have full possession over it? But is your wealth? So that's of those things as we will to be. So that's concerning having full, where that wealth is under your full control. It's under your full control and possession. Aywa.
The fourth condition, the elapse of a full lunar year on the property. The fifth condition is that a year must lapse on the property, owing to the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha saying, no zakat is to be taken from a property until a year passes on it.
Hey, so regarding concern that matter that has to be discussed, so aywa, tafaddal.
This is concerning what does not issue from the land as grains and fruits. However, as for what is produced from the land, zakat is entailed upon it whenever it exists. Thus, the lapse of a year is irrelevant for it, whereas the completion of a year remains stipulated with regard to money, cattle, and trade in commodities, as a kind of leniency towards the owner in order that the property can grow.
Hey, so as I mentioned, regarding concern the fifth of those conditions regarding mudya, hawl al-mal, that regarding concern the person as have this wealth in his possession for over a 1 year period. So a person must have that wealth within a 1 year period, then zakat is to be paid on it. And also that with some of the items that are mentioned in zakat. So not all that rule applies is to some, and that will be discussed further. So yes, of those things to be considered in some of those items of zakat is that the person had that wealth for over a 1 year period. Then he mentioned regarding concern that he mentioned concerning the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, la zakat fi malin, that there is no zakat fi malin hatta yahul alayhi al-hawl, that there is no zakat upon a wealth until a year has passed. They have gone over a 1 year period. Mention the hadith in there فقال رواه ابن ماجه وروي الترمذي معناه. So it's hadith that he mentioned here that there's a discussion between the ulama regarding the authenticity of this hadith. So the hadith generally regarding the hadith that is marfu' regarding concerning with this meaning لا zakat fi mal till the end of the hadith. There's also said that all the narrations are daif. All the narrations, and this one of Aisha, there's a narrator in the council called Al-Haritha, whose person, Haritha ibn Abil Rijal, he is said to be weak. So he's a weak narrator, but you have others who have narrated hadith. So you have one of the issue the hadith here is that of the narrators who are daif. So some of the ulama all the hadith to be daif. But you find the likes of Shaykh Albani and Shaykh Arnaout of contemporaries, rahimahullah, they are all hadith to be authentic based upon the various narrations. But you find Ibn Abdul Hadi Al-Hanbali that all concern. Our next issue regarding hadith is that the hadith in some narration it is marfu', going back to the Prophet ﷺ, and in some narration it is mawquf, meaning the statement of Aisha and others of the Sahaba. So some narration takes the hadith back to the Prophet ﷺ. All those narrations are da'if. All the narration that goes back to the Prophet ﷺ, they are da'if. But when they are added together, some of the ulama takes it to be that they strengthen each other, where they're elevated to the ruling of being sahih due to all combining together. And we said the mention of those contemporary Shaykh Albani and Shaykh Arnaout, that Shu'aib Arnaout, that all hadith to be authentic, sahih. But we find that, so you have that one issue, but the second issue is regarding concerning that the hadith that is mentioned here in some narrations, that it is mentioned as mawquf. Mawquf meaning that it goes back, it's a statement of one of the Sahabi. It's a statement of Sahabi, not per se that of the Prophet ﷺ. And those who mentioned concerning Ibn Abdul Hadi mentioned that al-mawquf asah. That narration that mentioned it is mawquf, that is more correct.
So, Umar, so you see, for instance, someone owns a property or they own something, I don't know, an item that they've bought, invested in to sell in the future. When it comes to paying zakat, do they pay zakat on the cost or
we will discuss that. I don't think we discuss separate. So that has to be the author, Rahimahullah, he will discuss each of those items separately. Okay. And if anything that are not mentioned, we'll add of things that are somewhat common practice. Aywa.
As for the offspring of cattle liable to zakah and the profit gained in trade, the lapse of the year is to be counted with regard to the original capital. Thus, it is not necessary that a complete year passes on the offspring of cattle or the profit if their original capital has reached the nisab. If it has not, the year is to be estimated from the time they complete the nisab. As for the creditor of an insolvent person, the creditor is to pay the zakat due of the debt when he receives it, in case the debt has remained for a whole year with the indebted. This is according to the soundest opinion of scholars.
So regarding that matter, the next item, the next point you mentioned, Aywa.
However, when being the creditor of a rich insolvent person, the creditor is to pay zakat due upon his property each year.
So regarding concerning that he mentioned that, and he discussed in brief regarding concerning cases regarding duyun, one who has debt. So you find concerning that matter regarding a person who have loan certain money to an individual. So the person who lent that individual, as we mentioned, a person possess, he has £10,000. Someone come and borrow from him 7,000 or let's say £8,000. So that 8,000 that have been lent, and for example have gone over a year, does the person pay zakat on that amount that have been lent? But he hasn't have it in his possession. So there's a khilaf between the ulama on this. of those that the ulama mentioned, because that money is still technically said to be his wealth. Nam, that he pays zakat on it. For each year that he has missed, or that wealth is still with that borrower. So each year, that zakat is still payable on that 8,000 if it is above the nisab. And when he receives it, then he has to pay it out for the year and for the past years that he missed. With me? So, for example, he has this wealth. He lent the 8 grand and it was loaned 3 years ago. And he got it this year. So he has to pay for those 3 years. Because that was still technically his wealth type of thing, and he still had the ability to receive it. So that wealth, I got to call off some of the ulama regarding that matter, that the person still technically is to pay zakat on that wealth even for the years that were missed. So we'll calculate for the last 3 years and pay zakat upon that sum that was lent. And those who owe that in reality, that person, that he only paid the zakat upon that borrowed sum of money when it is received. As for the other years, so only for the year that he received it. So upon receiving, you pay zakat. Of the 8,000 for this year, you pay your zakat. As for the 2 other years, then no. Because you were technically still didn't have full possession of that wealth. Nam? So Allahu A'lam concerned that, the view regarding the second view, that he paid for the year that the time that he receives it. It comes back into his possession. You have those who mention that 2 cases. You have that 1 case scenario. Then the other scenarios you have of those who owe that is to pay for all the previous years. And those who owe that, he pay for the year that he received it. Now, Allahu A'lam, that seems to be stronger. But even the next call is also strong. Now, the second of the case they mentioned, so the person who you lent your money and you know most likely you receive it. Then my next scenario regarding a person who have lent money to others, right? And he knows that with that person I'm dealing with, I'm not going to receive my money. He's gone. He's gone. So for that wealth, there's no zakat. For that money, so for that person who owed you, and the person has somewhat have skipped town, he has gone, you can't find him, but you know that money for me is deemed to be something which is lost. So there's no zakat on that money. Because that money now is said to be like lost. But as for the case where there's a most likely that you receive back your money, then are you to calculate all the years that have been missed, or should it be paid on the year you receive it? As for the year you paid, that's without any doubt. As for the past years, is it or not? Allahu A'lam. A khilaf between the ulama on that topic. Aywa. As for the person who have borrowed that money and received that money, if that money that he has borrowed is now, if it's above the amount of the nisab, then he has to pay zakat because he's said to be wealthy. So the person who have received that borrowed money, now he also have to pay zakat because now he has possessed something which is, you understand, he comply with all the conditions that we just mentioned before. Because now, for example, he borrowed 8 grand and the amount of zakat, for example, in the UK for this year is 3 grand, 3,000. That's the amount concerning zakah. Now, as I mentioned, that you have a website, a few sites, like if you want to know how much is zakat for this year or even today, if you go on your phone and put in zakat calculator, or you go to some of the main charities, they usually have a section that gives you a calculation for zakat regarding how much is nisab, gold, silver, for today. They sometimes do it out by a few pounds, or a little pound, sometimes they're a bit out, but they can give you a general estimate of how much is zakat for today. Now, so the shahid, the person who borrowed 8 grand from someone and has that money in his possession for 1 year, now then needs to pay zakat on that because that's above the nisab. If it is, for example, 3 grand. So because what he have exceed 3 grand, then he's to pay zakat on this. He's to pay zakat. And that's what of those who owe that, you're not to pay zakat for the previous year. They mention that if the person who receive it, you're paying, and the person who's lent it, you're paying for the previous year, then it's 2 amount being taken from that one sum. So that's of the thing that they can put forward regarding why they say those previous year for the person who have loaned the lender, he's not to pay for the years that have been missed, because the person who receive, if it's above the amount of the nisab, then needs to pay zakah. And it will be 2 sums, 2 amount being taken from 1 amount. Clear? Wallahu a'lam. أيوة تفضل.
Moreover, no zakah is due upon any property set for possession or usage, such as one's dwelling house, clothes, the furniture, the vehicles, and the animals prepared for riding and usage. As for what is set for rent as vehicles, stores...
So before I mention that, ما عدت من أموال الاستعمال والنقية. So I mentioned regarding concerning النقية, regarding concerning kunya, regarding concerning that wealth that you use to maintain yourself. So regarding concerning that, that for you to live, to pay for rent, pay for your travel, pay for your car, pay for your general houses, for your general expenses, then there's no zakat on those things. Now, so the person possessed an house, and its value maybe it's of great houses they value. There's no zakat on that house because it's been used for your personal use. So the car that may be a Mercedes or Rolls Royce, that itself as its value is thousands, there's no zakat because it's being used for your personal use. You might have a car for your wife. So those things that are for personal use, your clothing and the likes, and certain belongings that you mentioned, then there's no zakat that are paid upon those things. So this will be the extra wealth that the person have after maintaining, for using for their personal well-being. Then, so those things as he mentioned, his example, there's no zakat upon them. So our cars for personal use, the person that have a car that he use it for cabbing, then that goes into a different category. But he may use sometimes for his person, go to the shops, he will use it. But that car, for example, is bought mainly for doing trade, cabbing, taxing, then that car will be classed as not for personal use anymore. Even though sometimes it is used for personal things, but more it will be classed as urud al-tijara, of things relating to business. It says primary uses for his business, but used for his personal stuff, then it is what is considered is primary use, which is business. Nam. Aywa.
As for what is set aside for rent as vehicles, stores, and houses, no zakah is due upon its original capital, but zakah is due upon the rent paid for such a property if it reaches the nisab alone, or by adding it to another estate and a complete year lapses.
Hey, so regarding concern that the person like me have a property and it is for the purpose of they rented it out, then that becomes a part of. Then it becomes not a for its primary purpose is for business transaction, as it being rented. So the person pays zakat on this. He pays zakat on that property, as it's not then for his own personal use. Aywa.
As for the one upon whom zakat is obligatory, and he dies before paying it, it must be paid from his inheritance, and it is not annulled by his death.
So, for example, that's to add a person have more than one properties. So, a person like they might have there, as I said, the house that they live in London or live in a major city. They have a house there. But also they may have houses elsewhere. They have like a summer house. They have a winter house. A spring house. And they'll visit them but the house is just there that they use it for maybe a few months of the year, but it's for their personal use. Then there's no zakat on this. There's no zakat because it still as for personal use. So even though the person saw personal use doesn't mean the person may use that thing every day, but it is set aside for my personal use. I have a winter house, cottage. Winter time I go there. I have a summer house that I go there during the summertime, a few months of the year. Then because it still is personal use, there's no zakah. Clear? Anyway, just to clarify that. Anyway.
As for the one upon whom zakat is obligatory and he dies before paying it, it must be paid from his inheritance, and it is not annulled by his death. This is because Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah's debts have more right to be paid. The inheritor or others are to pay it from the inheritance of the deceased because it is a due right and it is not annulled by death. Furthermore, it is a debt obligatory upon the deceased and must be absolved from it.
So the Shaykh of Hafidullah, in clarifying this point regarding concerning of those cases that also zakat is to be paid on these properties or these items, is a person who may have died, but a person have left inheritance, things of value. So of those things before it is distributed, so as we discussed concerning Bab al-Janaza, that there are certain of the person's wealth after decease, the person have died, then those things to be somewhat to be fulfilled first, before those wealth is distributed to the inheritors. So of those things the person owes debts, if the person also zakat to be paid of the wealth of the person, that third, that is from his property, the money should be used for his burial. First and foremost, so those are things that will be taken first from his property. Then whatever remain after those things have been cleared, then it is distributed to the inheritors. So those things come first, as those things attached to him personally. Debts that may be owed to others, that is still on him, his responsibility, even though that he has died. Also, we mentioned his funeral payments is upon him. If he has the wealth to pay for it, it is taken from his wealth. And also zakat. Not necessarily in that order. No, I'm not saying in that order, but in the sense of those things have to be considered first before it is given to the inheritors. Aywa. That's the end of that?
That's the end of that chapter.
So it goes into... What time is it?
10 past.
Okay, any questions? Yeah, from the rent, that is, from the rent. Yeah, because that becomes a part of the business. So the rent that the person receiving then, that becomes the zakat.
So basically, for instance, if that rent was $6,000 a year, and you had 4 of them, and then it got to past the nisab, that's when you pay.
Yeah, you pay zakat, yeah.
But if it was just a 6 and that didn't reach the nisab,
then there's no. So if there's anything concerned that, even concerning if you have a business, we discuss. So even the person may have a business, which is buying and selling for trade and commerce. But also that business concerned to know that, also concerned on what the intakes, that it passed the nisab. So all those things are concerned is not what a person is earning, that it actually pass that nisab. Because so all those things to be discussed. So yes, concerning the rent, it's on not the original capital, but what you're gaining off it.
Airbnb, people might rent them for one day, weekend, and use them throughout the year when you're not using it. Yeah, but it's not managed directly by you. Someone else does it. Yeah, that money.
Then that becomes now tijara. Hey, so whatever the person made, so whatever money is made from those rental or service, then zakat is paid on that if it goes against the nisab. So just like the case that just the one, just like that one, it becomes now, yes, you may use it, but also you're giving access to others to use it with as an income for you. You understand? So yes, it may be at times you use it. You understand? So it becomes like you have a car, at times you use it, but also at times you do business with it. You understand? So also zakat is now has to be paid regarding the business aspect of things.
Does that money that is being given have to be banked to reach the nisab for me to pay zakat? So for example, if it's just money that I use for expendable income, meaning I need that money, i.e. I might have these other houses, but don't mean I'm wealthy. I still take that money that the person come rent in my house for 2 nights. I got money from it, spend it straight away.
We come to Dawud concerning it has to reach a nisab. So whatever you understand, so whatever you're taking in, you understand that amount have to exceed a certain amount. So if you say the month, they're getting rent, but by the time you spent off to repair this and that, that money is gone. You understand? So you have to say, oh, you understand? So that's the thing. So all those things are looked into. So we said the fact that the person may have certain things in a business doesn't necessarily mean you have to pay zakat. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to pay zakat. You may be a case where you don't because you're not taking enough. You're not taking in enough. You understand? So
And the second thing is when the person, you lend someone money, the 8,000 we're talking about, and then I die. Then just before the nisab, for example, just before the whole year ended, I'm going to pay him back, but I died. Do I then have to pay zakat on the 8,000 I borrowed from him, or does he get the money after I've died? Because obviously the money's there. I died, the money's there. Do they just take the money and pay it back?
I think it's the only back, please.
now that the person have died, and so from my understanding concerned to that, the person owed someone else 8 grand, and he's about to pay the person back. But right before, a couple of days before, a week before he paid, as an example, he died. Then that response will go back on his inheritors. Person who died, but that money though, if it is there, to be said, I would say that the person who died, still certain things that inheritors have to take into consideration, those 3 things. Amongst those 3 things, debts that are owed, that are outstanding, that they have to fulfill. You understand? If he has that money, so if you have the 3, they have to pass it on. Or that amount, pass it to the person.
Do they take the zakat out first before they give it to
They give it to him. They give it to him because that was earmarked for that purpose. It was earmarked for that purpose. Huh? If after you pay that wealth, you have no money, then khalas, there's no zakat upon you. You understand? Come said no. That money owed, it have more priority that you pay it back than, you understand, then pay zakat and then you're left short. Clear?
You know, like in our community, if someone owed someone 8 grand, they're probably never going to give it back. But that person died. So that person died, and the person who the creditor said, you know what, I forgive him.
Hey.
Does he pay zakat on that, even though he's
No, there's no zakat is paid. If he's ever given, then khalas, because he doesn't. That now he has like you have now given that person that money
so
as a gift.
Is the deceased person due to pay zakat on that wealth?
Now, the person have died. You understand? The person have. It becomes the person have died. So khalas. It's just that you have to get someone to that. Is more concerned that you're not expecting the payment back. Is more that you're trying to regarding his akhirah. You understand? You're trying to protect him regarding his akhirah, where he has to pay you back still. That is still outstanding even after death.
From the beginning, did you say disbelievers have to pay zakat?
No, I said didn't. The author Rahimullah mentioned it doesn't say. So when said they do not pay zakat. They do not. Because of they are not Muslim. So the condition of zakat, the person has to be Muslim. So the person is a non-Muslim. So a non-Muslim will include concern the person who is a murtad, the person of apostate from Islam. So any person a kafir, al-asli, meaning concerning Christians, Jew, Buddhists, all those people, there's no zakat upon them. Hey, so alhamdulillah. So with that inshallah ta'ala we'll end for tonight and continue next week, bi'idhnillahi tabarak wa ta'ala, continue regarding, discussing concerning particular items regarding zakat. So it start concerning that fi zakat bahimatul an'am. So the next thing we'll be discussing specific of those matters or items regarding zakat, regarding what are the rules pertaining to each individual, each of those items individual regarding the sum and its calculation. Wabillahi tawfiq.